So I got my Hercules DJControl Inpulse T7 earlier this week, and as promised, I'm gonna do a little video on it here. Oh, it's probably gonna be a rather long video, but you can skip through the chapters if you want to. Of course, everybody probably knows this by now. It's the cheapest splitting platter controller you can basically get. And after making sure that I had the newest basically version of Virtual DJ, so it was supported, the support was included, and installing the drivers from Hercules and connecting everything, it actually started working instantly. But there were a few caveats that I bumped into, so that's going to be the first part here. And then the second part is going to be about settings and remappings that I did. And then maybe a couple of cons in yet, because I can tell you up front here that this is a really excellent controller. I'm very happy with it. So let's get started. So the first thing I bumped into after installing everything is setting it up, loading a track and playing it, was that the spinning platter up here wasn't spinning. It was basically just still, and it did a little bit of nudging when I touched it, but it also didn't react correctly. And I was like, why is that? Is this thing broken? No, it's not. It's simply because Virtual DJ, of course, has a vinyl mode. And this thing doesn't have a vinyl mode because, well, it's always supposed to be vinyl mode, I guess. So it's all about up here simply enabling vinyl mode. And once I did that, just to here, and played the track, the spinning platter was indeed spinning and reacting like you would expect a spinning platter to do. And then the next little thing was the audio config, because after I installed, I got everything up and running and it was working really well. But I of course knew that I had installed ASIO drivers, but this was actually set to Wasabi drivers, the Windows drivers, and I really didn't want that. And I wondered why, and I can't really tell. Maybe it was the order of which I did things, but if I just re-click this button here, it switched to the ASIO drivers, like you can see, and that's what I'm gonna use at least. Then there was the ASIO setup, and I'm now switched that to 512 samples. So a little bit slower, of course, a little bit more latency, but that's why I usually do, to make sure I get better audio quality. So I think that's quite a bit lower by default, but I'm switching it to 512 for my setup. Then finally down here, we have the Windows config for audio. So that's actually a little hidden right now, but I can click here, and click this speaker. And you can see that's actually using my controller. That also ruins the audio. So you definitely want to put that on something else, like maybe just an internal sound card on an actual laptop. So like this. So that doesn't mess with it. So there's a couple of changes that I needed to make sure I got a proper audio quality. And the next thing I did was going in or out of Virtual DJ a few times and playing a few seconds and stuff. And then I wanted to do a little bit more. And then I was, for instance, looking down here, what has all the little effects. So you can set the effects. You can basically arm them. So now the one is armed, and then of course trigger with this. And it didn't. I couldn't see which one I've armed. I was like, I wonder why. I tried to look at the mapping. But then I noticed up here that these lights and these lights were kind of frozen. They didn't move. So that's basically I think, a little bit of a bug. Probably again because of the order of which I did things. Because just as soon as I shut down the studio and shut down the controller and started up again, these things started working again. And these things started lighting up, and then I didn't have this problem anymore. So that's just a little thing. If you think, well, why is it almost, there's a few lights, but it's like I couldn't see which which PFL, which headphones output I'm listening to either. These didn't light up. This thing didn't light up, but that's a beat mix guide. I don't think I'm ever gonna look at that. But these things didn't light up, and if that happens, simply restart it, and then it'll probably light up. That's what did it with me. I've only had this happen once, but it confused me a little bit. Then the next thing was that I got surprised by these stems buttons, the dedicated stems button for instrumentals and vocals. So the idea, of course, being that you can get an instant instrumental by clicking that one, and an instant vocal or a cappella by clicking that one, if your stems are running and working and prepared, of course, and all that stuff. And that works like this. See. Just like you would expect. But the thing is, if you have slow fingers, it'll actually become while pressed. So you think you turned on the only instrumentals or a cappella, but it'll kick back when you let it go. That surprised me a little bit. So for instance, if you look at that like this, holding it down a little too long, and then the vocals come back. Because if you hold it down a little bit too long, it'll be while pressed. So if you want to have it continue to be instrumental or vocal, you just have to click it fast. So yeah, just had to get used to that. I could of course remap it, but I think it's pretty cool actually. It just surprised me the first time I used it. Then that's the thing about remembering master cue or master pre-fade listen if you want to. So the headphones. So if I'm playing a track over here, then that's the master output right now, so that'll of course play. And if I start a track over here, that won't play because it's turned down, right? Then make sure you put that in the headphones. Turn the other one off in the headphones. Turn down the master. Then of course I'm hearing this like beat, like you would expect. Then I maybe want to blend in a little bit of a master, right? But that doesn't work. And why does that work? Because that's still playing. Well, that's because of this little button. You have to remember to send the master to the PFL for this to work. So if I turn it down again, enable this. Now I mix it in again, mixing in the master into the headphones. Now it's the master you can hear in the headphones. And back again to just the one you'd expect to be there. And over here, you can now hear the master deck. The one that's up here if I turn out the master. So this little button is important to remember to turn on if you want to use this mix where you put in some of the master into the headphones, into the cue, like this. So there are two extra settings that's inside VDJ that's specifically made for the T7, and those only appear, of course, when this controller is connected, and that also exists for other types of controllers. So if we go into settings, we can have a look at those. And they're actually here in the options if you can find them. But an easier way to find them is to go into controllers, pick the controller here if it isn't already selected, and then click the little cogwheel down here, because then you only get the ones that are specifically made for this controller. And there are only two of them. The first one is pretty simple. It's if you want the LEDs that are not really supposed to be on at any given moment to be half on, so dimmed. So click that on and off. And then you can hopefully see here down here on the controller that it's on, so dimmed, off, on, off. The same if we go over here, like looking for instance at the headphones. So on, you can see this one is halfway on, and this one is full on. The same up here. None of the effects is armed or enabled right now, but if I click some of them, you can see they turn on like that. But if I disable this, so no dimming shown, then they're totally off. So that's one setting to look into. The other one is to have actually 6 effects on each deck. 6 different effects that you can turn on and off instead of just 3. And I went with 3, but you can pick 6 if you like. So as you can see over here, when I switch to 6, you get 6 of them over here. And you can of course set each one of them. So that also means that here, if I turn on all 6 of them and trigger them, then it disables and enables all 6 effects. But like I said, I prefer to have just 3 on each deck. So switching back like this. And in that mode, the first 3 are for the left deck, and the second 3 are for the right deck, of course, like you would expect. Another more general setting that may be worth looking into is the ramp stop time. By default, it's set to 0.0, so none. And of course, then that sounds like this. So nothing basically. So if you change the setting and you pause the deck, you will actually get like a ramp stop time, so it'll sound a bit like a break. So I usually set it to 0.3, like this, because then when I stop the track, it sounds like this instead. So that setting will then, of course, also work if you use it to get out of a traditional beat mix. So maybe something like this. And now, this being a spinning platter controller, that of course means that starting up the engine takes some time. So if I press play, you can clearly hear that it's not starting instantly. One more time. So that's of course important if you're usually used to just pressing play when you want it to play in time. So there's a setting you can use to improve this, called motor wheel instant play. And if you enable that, you get a better result, because then Virtual DJ fakes it a little bit, so it simply starts the track before the engine is really up and running. So now when that setting is enabled, it's a lot more precise when you press play. And you can hear the startup of the engine. But I still find that it's not exactly precise. So there's 2 other ways of doing this. You can use the hot cue. Then it's even more precise, I think. And you can also do a thing where you actually start the track by pressing the cue button and then take it over by pressing the play. So basically telling Virtual DJ to keep playing the track, because when you play the cue button to cue, really to listen, to pre-fade listen, something like this, then the actual spinning platter doesn't start spinning. So you don't get that at all, of course. And then you can just take over by using the play button, so like this. And then it continues to spin. So that's actually how I find I do it mostly on this controller. There's actually also a more old school way of doing that. And that's by using silent Q. So I'll map that to a custom button here. You can map that to anything. Say just silent Q. And that is, like I said, pretty old school. That was actually invented for DVS systems because you can't really do anything about the startup time on a regular turntable. That's sending in an analog input, even though it's a manual signal for the software to interpret. It'll get there when it gets there because it's analog, right? So what silent Q does is actually that it mutes here until you press a hot Q. So I can just show it right here so you can see what I mean. So no audio, and then I press a hot Q. And can't really tell anything here because we're using all digital, right? I'm just sitting here clicking the screen. But the idea is that when you then press the hot Q, the motor is already spinning. So there will be no motor startup time. There'll be no need for like faking it or anything like that. So it'll be pretty precise. So with silent Q enabled, the controller will act like this. I play, and it starts spinning and playing, but nothing comes out because it's actually muted. And then when I press the hot Q, the motor is already spinning, so you can't really get this startup time problem. So then there's actually another problem with spinning platters, and that has to do with when the motor is stopping. Because that stopping could of course trigger something being detected on the jog wheel, like maybe it thought I was doing something with my hands. So to prevent that, it won't be doing anything instantly after you pause a track. So take a look at this. Pause, move, and it didn't do anything for a second maybe. So that's a bit annoying, but like I said, it's so that it doesn't start detecting the motor slowing down and as something it should react upon. But I think this 1 full second is too long, so I usually set it lower. So the setting is called motor wheel lock time, and I also usually lower that from 1.0 to probably 0.2. So with the setting at 0.2, I don't really see this problem anymore. So like this. So then the adjustment of the platter with my hand is available to me pretty much instantly. So I've remapped very little on this controller because I think it's pretty much perfect as is. But there's a few things that I do that maybe not everybody does, like use pitch reset a lot. So I remapped that. I know it's actually also on the shift sync, I think, but I use it all the time to bring the pitch back to 0 after mixing. So I'm not going to use the range button. That's just going to be always in the same setting, range-wise for pitch range. So I've used the range button for pitch reset. And then that goes together with the shift range down here for pitch lock. So I can like bring it back locked on both decks. And then I don't use the assist button much, I think, but definitely not the shift assist prepare button. So I mapped that to vinyl mode to be able to do what I mentioned earlier in this video, turning the motor on and off basically when using the controller. So I'll just demo that really quick. So first the pitch reset is on the range button, like I said. So if I change the pitch and I play, and I can bring it back. And it also lights up while it brings it back. So for that, of course, I also changed the LED for that button. Then I mapped shift plus range to pitch lock. So that means I can take a much slower track and load it over here on deck B, like this one, for instance. And then when I play that and I sync this one over here, I can bring that back together with this one gradually because they're locked together. So something like this. Sync this one, then engage the pitch lock and try to start it in time. That looks fine. Bring it in. and then pitch reset them together. And then it gradually brings back the pitch to 0 on this deck and turns this deck much faster, right? Bring back the, take this out, bring back the bass on this one. So like that, so that's what pitch lock can be used for. So like I said, that's mapped on range plus shift plus range here. Then of course there was the vinyl mode, because now that I figured out that enabling and disabling the vinyl mode actually lets me use this controller without the motor if I need that at some point. So I thought I needed to map that as well. And it's not here because, well, it's always supposed to be able to spin, right? But you can simply disable the spinning part. So right now it's on, of course. But if I click Shift plus Assist, Prepare, like I said, then I can take away the vinyl mode. So do that. Play again. And now it's just notching. So much more like a controller. And I can actually kick it back in while it's running. And it starts. Disable it again. So I think that's pretty cool. So I'm probably gonna keep that so I can go in and out of having a spinning platter and a regular just jog wheel. And then actually the only other thing that I've changed are the pad mode buttons here. And that's actually not even a remapping, that's just reassigned with the mouse, right? So I've actually only changed the second one. So the other one are like they are from the factory, if you will, or how Atomics mapped it for this unit. So we of course have hot cues. And on the shift version of that, we have key cue. So and let's just skip that for now. Then on the third one we have stems. And on the shift function for that, we have saved loops. I have no saved loops right here. And the first one is the sampler. And then the shift function for that are the scratch banks. So like I said, the only one I've changed is this one. So actually there's another way to do loop, right? We have this one to do loop. So if I play. So for auto loop, I actually just use this one always when that's available on a controller. So I don't need regular auto loops over here. So I think they figured it out too, because they haven't put that on the loop button. What they had put on the loop button to begin with was actually loop rolls. But now I've taken it over and I've put in my my master pad page that I always need to have. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on that one. So I'll just link that in the video description, because I've already done a thorough video on my master pad page that I need to have. But then I moved the loop rolls down to the auto loops, because I don't, so the shift function, because I never don't need the auto loops anymore, because like I said, I always use that button for that. So these things, right? So like I said, the only thing I really remapped or reassigned are the two functions for the loop pad mode button here. Then of course there's the mic input on the back of this unit, which could be a con. I'll probably mention it there too. But that's just a jack input on the back, and there's no tone control. There's no EQ on it, there's no nothing. There's only a volume button. And that's just not really good enough probably for use. But luckily Virtual DJ can help us a little bit here. Otherwise I think it'd be unusable. So if I speak into that microphone instead, and that of course works, but I can't adjust it in any way except for the volume. So what can we do? Well, luckily it's also inserted into the software. You can see down here there's an input line for it. So that means that it's into the software. Okay, that's nice. What else? Well, then here on the master we need to turn it on. So now it's on, so that's fine, and you can see the microphone input coming in. Okay, what else then? Well, actually if we want to do something to it, we need to also make sure that it's being center master, so we can go ahead and look at the mic stuff here. And we have microphone input to master, and we need to set that to yes. Then it works. You can also here you get a little bit of an echo, and that's simply the latency. So that'll also depend on your ASIO latency. So this thing down here, right? So we can tell that that's actually going through the software and being used. Okay, so now that we've got all that covered, what we need then know? Well, then we can actually add mic effects. And you get those from extension if you don't already have them. That's a pad page. And then of course you need the effect you actually want to use. And that'll probably be the 10-band EQ down here at the bottom. So this thing. So when you install that, you can locate the mic effects at the pad as a pad page and select the EQ in the effect select, so here. And after that, you can turn on the FX GUI, and then we have this. And then we can turn it on, and then we can actually start EQing this stuff. So I'm just going to do some extreme stuff so we can hear that it's happening. But of course, you want to EQ this properly. So that's a way to get tone control or EQ on your mic input on this controller, even though it has none. So basically, you're using the mic effects pad page to select the effect that is EQ, and you start adjusting the EQ. But to make that work, you need to make sure you have turned the microphone on in here, and you need to make sure that you have included it in here, in the mic input to master here, and you also need to make sure, of course, that you have the audio input. That's default. And of course, that you can hear, it'll suffer a little bit about the double latency, right? The latency in and latency out again. But if you need to EQ it, because otherwise they can't hear you at a given event, I think this is definitely worth noticing, so you can actually get a mic input using this controller that you can actually use for something. So what are the cons on this thing? What's the general impression? Well, I think it's pretty good. I mean, first thing you can look at is the quality okay? Well, it's not a Rain 1 and it's not a Pioneer Riff 7 with the other big spinning platter controllers, but I don't think it's trying to be. I mean, it is much cheaper, like half the price, and it's also half the weight because it's belt driven. And I mean, thinking about it being a Hercules, which is like an entry-level controller, I think a lot has happened since this controller, which is one I used a while ago as a backup controller. So comparing it to that one, I'll say the Hercules has come a long way. But would you actually use this for anything besides a backup? Yeah, I think I will. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, yes, it's belt driven. You can actually open this and look down at the belt, and you can also change the belt or put it on again if something bad happens. So you can see the belt if you will. But I think it's pretty cool. That it being belt driven also means that it doesn't do long spin back spins very well. So you can see. You can improve that a little bit by maybe removing this actually. But not a lot. So this slip mat, because well, it's not really a turntable, that actually maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but you can remove it if you want to. There's also a few people who have done mods on this. So to make this backspin better, other slip mats, bigger slip mats, also where you can actually tighten this directly to the spindle, because it's the spindle that's registering the stuff, right? Doesn't really matter. It's the spindle. And I've linked to a couple of videos in the video description, but I've actually ordered this little thing, so I'll try to attach it to here, see if I dare put it on. If I do, I'll make a video about that. But that's all about the backspin, all that sort of stuff. So can't really do that too well. Then there's this fader section. Even Hercules know that that's not good. So this is for entry level, and then Hercules have already come out. It was probably planned with a new one that you can buy. It's pretty cheap. It's less than $100, I think. And then you can replace this entire section. So it means you also replace the up faders, so not just the crossfader. So that's pretty cool. I might order that. And of course, Innofader has come up with a one that's twice as expensive, but presumably also will work forever. So you can also order that one. I'll find those in the video description and link to them as well. So that kind of take care of the mixer section. So I think apart from that, it's pretty cool. Then there's this thing. I think it's a little bit confusing that we have 6 of these. And like I said, I can't figure that out. I mean, if I turn on, for instance, these 3 and I'm in 6 effect mode, they'll of course work on both decks, because both decks will now have 6 effects. But they may be different effects because they're using the local deck's effect slots. So if I turn them on one of them and on the other, they won't sound the same. So for instance, I can try. So on the first one, it'll be cut and echo, like this. But on the second one, with the same effects enabled, it'll be flanger and reverb. So I think that's way confusing. So I've always said I'm gonna set it up with these 3 for deck 1 and these 3 for deck 2. And then of course there was the no EQ on the mic, no tone control, but Virtual DJ can kind of help fix that for us, right? So that's a good thing. So I think that was basically some of my cons in this thing. I think it's pretty cool. And even though it's plasticky and light, it feels sturdy enough. Of course, we don't know this quality yet because nobody have used this for more than a few months. And people are already talking about these going out fast. But of course, we already talked about replacing those. Probably want to do that if you want to use this professionally. Other than that, I think it's pretty cool. And it's very, very well mapped by Atomics for Virtual DJ. I think it's crazily good map. You can see how little I actually changed. So apart from me probably wanting to do something about the spinning platter here. Oh, there's an echo here. And putting that up here so I get a better control. I might do that. And I might also replace this at some point. I think I'm gonna love this thing. I mean, I've loved it so far, and I've already done my first hour mix and for Mixcloud, and that worked fine. The only errors were errors made by me, so I can't complain about that. So yeah, thumbs up. I mean, I love this thing for what it is. Of course, it's cheap. Remember, it's cheap. It's half the price of other spinning platters. The controllers.